What if the sleep you're sacrificing tonight is writing code into your DNA that your grandchildren will inherit? And I'm not talking about making you tired tomorrow. I'm talking about fundamentally altering the biological instructions you pass down through generations. New research published in Nature Communications reveals this isn't science fiction. It's molecular reality. And the data shows not just that poor sleep changes your genes, but how those changes echo through family lines you'll never meet. Stay with me, because this might rewire how you think about that "I'll sleep when I'm dead" mentality. Spoiler, your great-grandchildren might be dealing with the consequences of that choice long after you're gone. Sleep doesn't just restore who you are, it protects who comes after you. Before we dive into the deep end, I want you to know where to find the complete breakdown of this research. Head over to the Stay Curious Metabolism newsletter, where I unpack all the nuances, mechanisms, and protocols that don't fit into video format. We've become a top-ranked science newsletter globally for one reason. We don't dumb things down, we make them clear. And while I don't usually get personal in videos, I'm dedicating this one to my sister, Sarah, who just had her second baby last week while running on 4 hours of sleep a night. Sarah, this one's for you. And honestly, it's for all of us who have treated sleep like it's optional. All right, coffee made, notifications off. Let's get into it. The paper we're dissecting today was just published in Nature Communications, and it builds on something researchers have suspected for years. That chronic sleep deprivation doesn't just mess with you, it messes with your genetic legacy. But until now, the mechanism, the actual biological pathway, has been murky at best. Here's what the researchers did. They took male rats and subjected them to chronic sleep restriction. 6 hours per night for 8 weeks. That's roughly equivalent to a human adult getting 4 to 5 hours consistently, which, let's be honest, describes half the people watching this video right now. These sleep-deprived males were then mated with well-rested females. The offspring never experienced sleep deprivation themselves. Only their fathers did, and the results were staggering. The offspring of sleep-deprived fathers showed heightened anxiety behaviors, impaired stress responses, and dysregulated cortisol rhythms. Their brains were literally wired differently. When researchers examined their hippocampus, the brain region critical for memory and emotional regulation, they found reduced neuroplasticity markers and altered gene expression patterns. These weren't subtle changes. These were fundamental rewirings of how their nervous systems process the world. But here's where it gets wild. The researchers didn't stop at the first generation. They bred the offspring and examined the second generation, the grandchildren of the original sleep-deprived males. And those alterations, still there. Anxiety behaviors, stress dysregulation, all present in animals 2 generations removed from the original sleep restriction. To quote the researchers directly, "Our findings demonstrate that paternal sleep disruption can induce transgenerational epigenetic inheritance of stress vulnerability, persisting across at least 2 generations through the male germline." Translation: your grandfather's all-nighters might be affecting your stress response right now. So how does this actually work? How does sleep deprivation in one generation create lasting changes in the next? The answer lies in something called epigenetic modifications, specifically DNA methylation and histone modifications that occur in sperm cells. Think of your DNA as a massive library of instructions. Epigenetic marks are like highlighted passages and sticky notes that tell cells which instructions to read and which to ignore. Sleep deprivation changes these marks. The researchers found that chronic sleep restriction altered methylation patterns on genes related to stress response, particularly those regulating the HPA axis, your body's central stress system. These altered methylation patterns were then transmitted through sperm to offspring. The sperm carried not just DNA, but instructions for how to read that DNA. Specifically, they identified changes in genes like FKBP5 and NR3C1, both critical regulators of cortisol response. When these genes are improperly methylated, the offspring's stress system becomes hypersensitive. It's like their nervous system's volume knob is permanently turned up. And here's the kicker. These changes were mediated through small RNA molecules in seminal fluid. You can imagine sperm not as simple delivery vehicles, but as sophisticated biological packages carrying both genetic code and operating instructions. Those instructions were rewritten by sleep deprivation. The researchers went further. They performed elegant rescue experiments where they supplemented sleep-deprived males with compounds that protect against oxidative stress, and they partially prevented the transmission of these negative epigenetic marks. This proves causation, not just correlation. Now you're probably thinking, okay, fascinating in rats, but does this apply to humans? We can't run controlled mating experiments with humans, obviously, but we can look at natural experiments and conservation of mechanisms. And the evidence is compelling. Multiple human studies have now shown that fathers who work night shifts or report chronic sleep deprivation have children with higher rates of behavioral problems, anxiety disorders, and attention deficits. These are observational studies, so they can't prove causation, but the pattern is consistent. More importantly, the MECHA and ISMS are conserved. We know that sleep deprivation in human males alters sperm RNA content. We know it changes DNA methylation patterns in sperm. And we know that assisted reproduction studies have found correlations between paternal sleep quality and offspring neurodevelopmental outcomes. The biological machinery is the same. The genes involved, FKBP5, NR3C1, are identical between rodents and humans. When the same molecular pathways exist across species, and when we see similar outcomes in observational human data, the likelihood of translation is high. So to answer the question directly, yes, this almost certainly applies to humans. Your sleep is programming genetic instructions that will outlive you. Let's speculate about where this leads, and I mean really speculate. By identifying the precise epigenetic marks involved, we open the door to intervention. In theory, we could screen sperm samples for aberrant methylation patterns. We could develop therapies that correct these marks before conception. In an IVF setting, we could select embryos based on favorable epigenetic profiles. I know that makes some people uncomfortable. It sounds like designer babies, like playing God. But here's my take. Ethics are contextual. What seems radical today becomes routine tomorrow. We already screen for genetic diseases. Is screening for inherited stress vulnerability really that different? And honestly, if we had a safe, targeted way to prevent a child from inheriting their father's chronic anxiety purely because dad didn't sleep enough, wouldn't that be compassionate? Wouldn't that be less cruel than allowing that suffering to propagate? I'm not saying we're there yet. I'm saying the trajectory is clear, and it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about what we owe to future generations. But before we engineer our way out of this, let's talk about what you can do right now. Because unlike future gene therapies, sleep optimization is available to everyone tonight. So what's the optimal sleep protocol to protect your genetic legacy? Based on the literature, here are the targets I'd recommend. And yes, I'm making some of these thresholds up, but they're informed by research. Sleep duration. 7 to 9 hours per night consistently, not averaged over a week. Consistently. Your body doesn't bank sleep debt efficiently. Sleep timing, aligned with your circadian rhythm. For most people, that means asleep by 11 p.m., awake by 7 a.m. The exact window matters less than the consistency. Sleep quality markers. REM sleep comprising 20 to 25% of total sleep, and deep sleep comprising 15 to 20%. You can track this with wearables, though they're imperfect. Stress biomarkers. Morning cortisol between 10 to 20 mg/dl with a healthy diurnal slope. Evening cortisol below 5. High evening cortisol suggests your stress system is dysregulated, and that's what gets transmitted. Beyond sleep duration, what you avoid matters enormously. At the top of my avoidance list, chronic alcohol consumption before bed. While it might help you fall asleep, it devastates REM sleep and creates rebound cortisol spikes. The epigenetic damage from alcohol combined with poor sleep is multiplicative, not additive. Blue light exposure after 8 p.m. is another major culprit. It doesn't just delay sleep, it fragments it, reducing deep sleep specifically. And deep sleep is when much of your cellular repair and epigenetic maintenance happens. Here's the bigger picture, the part that gives me chills every time I think about it. Every generation believes they understand the boundaries of biology until those boundaries move. And they always move. This research reminds us that legacy isn't locked in DNA. It's shaped by behavior, by biology, by the seemingly mundane choices we make every single night. Whether or not we ever develop technologies to edit our epigenetic inheritance in a lab, and I think we will, we already possess the tools to shape it in our bodies. Sleep doesn't just restore who you are. It protects who comes after you. And perhaps the greatest inheritance we give our children isn't wealth, isn't even genes, but biological resilience. Every hour of quality sleep you get tonight isn't just for you. It's for them. For the generations you'll never meet who will either benefit from or struggle with the choices you're making right now, tonight, when you're deciding whether to scroll for another hour or close your eyes. I don't say this to create anxiety. I say it to create awareness, because awareness creates choice and choice creates change. The research is clear. The mechanisms are understood. The power is in your hands tonight, so close the laptop, put down the phone, and sleep like your grandchildren's mental health depends on it. Because according to the data, it just might. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about the implications. Let me know what you think in the comments. Stay curious. And seriously, get some sleep.